Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're focusing on something pretty specific happening up in Buffalo, Minnesota.
That's right. There's this proposal about the municipal liquor store on Highway 55.
Exactly. A plan to spend somewhere between, $7 and $9 million to tear it down and rebuild it.
Which is a lot of money for a city project.
Yeah.
So some concerned citizens actually put together a survey.
And that's what we're digging into today, the results of that survey.
Yeah.
We want to understand what the community is really thinking.
Yeah, get a clear picture of where residents stand. Because, this isn't just about a building. It's about finances, priorities.
And potentially an alternative use for that money. There's a strong feeling about maybe using it to pay down city debt instead.
Right. So our goal is basically to unpack what people said directly, what the key takeaways are from their feedback.
Okay, so let's get into it. First off, who actually answered this survey?
Well, the vast majority said they are residents of Buffalo.
Okay, so local voices.
Definitely. And most of them also said they've actually shopped at that specific Highway 55 liquor store.
So these aren't just random opinions. These are folks who live there and use the store.
Mm-hmm.
That gives their feedback some real weight,
Absolutely. It's grounded in their actual experience. So what was their experience, starting with, say, the prices?
Prices. Yeah, that was a big one. There's a really strong feeling that the muni prices are higher than other places.
Higher? Like, how much higher are we talking? Did people give estimates?
They did. It varied, of course, but people were estimating anywhere from 5%, maybe up to 25%. Some even said more.
Wow. Okay, so that perception of paying more is definitely out there.
For sure. And if you already feel like you're paying a premium, maybe you're less excited about funding a huge rebuild.
That makes sense. That perception is a critical piece here. What about the place itself? Like the practical stuff, parking, how it looks?
Right. They asked about that too. Parking, interestingly. Most people said they haven't really had trouble finding a spot there.
Okay. So parking isn't a major driver for needing a whole new setup.
Doesn't seem like it. And the building's appearance.
Yeah. What do they think of how it looks now?
The general vibe was kind of fine or, didn't really notice.
Not terrible, not amazing.
Exactly. Some people did say, it could use improvement, but they followed up with, doesn't require a total rebuild.
So again, not exactly a ringing endorsement for spending millions on aesthetics if the current state is basically acceptable for most.
Yeah, if parking's okay and it looks fine, the argument for a complete teardown based on those factors seems a bit weaker.
What about the selection, the product variety?
Good question. Generally, people seem pretty satisfied with the variety they have now.
Okay, so they can find what they need mostly.
Seems so. But here's something really interesting. A lot of respondents said they'd be willing to accept less variety.
Less variety, why?
If it meant avoiding the expensive rebuild. They basically said they'd prefer a smaller selection if it saved the city millions of dollars.
Wow, that really says something, doesn't it? It points towards a community that's maybe pretty fiscally conscious right now.
I think so. They seem to be prioritizing careful spending over, having every single craft beer option imaginable.
And that probably connects to how they feel about the city's finances overall.
Absolutely. The survey definitely picked up on wider concerns.
Yeah.
Property taxes, for instance. Lots of people saying they're too high.
Okay, concern about taxes. That's pretty common, but what else?
The city's debt. That seemed to be an even bigger worry for many. It's over $70 million, apparently.
70 million. Yeah, that's a significant number for a city that size.
And people noticed. Respondents frequently called that debt level too high. It's clearly on their minds.
Well, yeah, a big debt load like that, it can really limit what a city can do down the road, right? Affects bond ratings, maybe future projects.
And you see that concern reflected directly in how they feel about this specific liquor store project.
Let me guess. Not fans.
Not generally, no. There's really strong opposition to spending that $7 to $9 million on the rebuild. The number of comments against it was pretty striking.
Okay, so let's recap. We have residents who mostly think the current store is adequate, maybe a bit pricey.
Right. Parking's fine, looks okay, variety is good enough, or even could be less.
And they're worried about taxes and very worried about the city's $70 million plus debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not really surprising what the main alternative suggestion was.
Which was?
Use the money, that $7 to $9 million, to pay down the city's debt.
Ah, okay. Straight to the debt.
Yep. That came up over and over. We saw comments like, do not rebuild, use the money to pay down the city's $70+ million of debt.
Okay.
It was a very clear message.
That really shows a focus on long-term financial health for the city. Paying down debt versus a new building project.
Especially a project where, as we saw, many don't feel the need is urgent or even necessary.
Right. It makes you think about the potential interest savings alone if they paid off a chunk of that debt now. Did the survey touch on that?
Not directly on the interest savings calculations, but the principle of using the money for debt was loud and clear.
Okay. Were there other ideas for how that money could be used besides debt?
Oh yeah, several. A community center was a popular one. People mentioned specific things they'd want, like pools or indoor play areas.
Things that serve, well, the broader community, families, kids.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Others pointed to basic infrastructure needs, roads, sidewalks, even water quality improvements.
Again, core city services and quality of life things. Makes sense.
There were also calls for investing more in parks and recreation. Things like splash pads came up, pickleball courts, sports complexes.
So a clear theme of wanting investment in things that benefit many residents, often focusing on families and recreation.
Yeah, and even things like natural resource conservation or finding ways to reduce utility bills were mentioned. It's a broad list, but the common thread seems to be public good over the liquor store.
It really highlights a potential difference in priorities, doesn't it? Between this specific rebuild proposal and what residents might see as more valuable for the community overall.
Definitely. And interestingly, some people took it a step further.
How so?
They questioned whether the city should even be in the liquor business at all.
Oh, okay. So the privatization argument came up.
It did. Some respondents explicitly suggested privatizing the store, arguing that retail isn't really a core function of government, especially when there's significant debt.
That's a fundamental question for any municipality running enterprise funds like this. What is the core mission? Is running a retail store the best use of city resources and focus?
Especially, as they point out, with over $70 million in debt looming.
Right. It adds another layer to the whole discussion. What about confidence in the people making these decisions, the city administration?
Yeah, the survey asked about that too.
Yeah.
And the feedback wasn't overly positive on that front.
Meaning low confidence.
Generally, yes. People express relatively low confidence in how the city administration manages finances.
Oof. That's tough.
And also low confidence that the administration would actually, listen to the feedback from this survey.
So a feeling that maybe the decision is already made?
Some comments definitely hinted at that, a sense of they'll do what they want anyway, that kind of cynicism.
That signals a potential trust issue, which is crucial for local government. If people feel their input doesn't matter, especially on big-ticket items.
It makes things difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It really emphasizes why transparency and demonstrably acting on feedback are so important.
Totally. Now, did anyone get into the actual financial viability of the rebuild itself beyond just the cost?
Some did, yeah. They tried to look at it from a return on investment perspective.
Okay, based on past profits.
Exactly.
Hmm.
They were looking at how much the store has profited historically and questioning how many years it would take to make back a $7 to $9 million investment.
Then the conclusion was?
Well, some described the potential ROI as horrible, basically arguing that the numbers just don't support such a massive outlay for the likely return.
So it wasn't just an emotional no, but also a kind of practical financial calculation for some residents.
Right. It shows people are really thinking critically about the dollars and cents, not just the idea of a new building.
Which loops back perfectly to that idea of prioritizing, doesn't it?
It really does. Many comments explicitly said the city needs to prioritize, focus on community needs, family-oriented projects, essential services.
Over what they perceive as an unnecessary, expensive liquor store rebuild.
Yeah. It raises questions about, what the city's spending says about its values.
And the final piece that seemed to emerge was around transparency, you mentioned.
Yes, and communication. This feeling came up repeatedly that residents feel a bit in the dark sometimes.
Like a lack of openness from the city.
Uh-huh. And that sense that feedback, even when given, doesn't always seem to land or be acknowledged properly.
Which, again, can fuel opposition and that feeling of disconnect we talked about.
Definitely. So if we step back and look at this whole survey, our deep dive really shows a pretty unified message coming from Buffalo residents, wouldn't you say?
Overwhelmingly so. There is significant, widespread opposition to spending $7 to $9 million to tear down and rebuild the Highway 55 liquor store.
It's very clear. And just as clear is the preferred alternative.
Use those funds to tackle the city's debt. That $70 million plus figure is a major, major concern for people.
And beyond debt, They want to see investment in things that benefit the whole community parks, infrastructure, maybe a community center.
Right. This isn't just about rejecting one project. It's really about advocating for a different set of priorities, a different vision for how city money should be spent.
This survey acts as a really powerful snapshot of the community's voice on this major decision.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads to the final thought, doesn't it? For the city management, but also for you listening in Buffalo.
Yeah, what are the broader implications here?
Yeah.
You have this very clear feedback.
So how does this affect the city's financial future? And maybe just as importantly, how does it affect the relationship, the trust between the city and the people who live there?
How can this feedback be used, constructively to maybe foster a more collaborative way forward?
A way that really balances legitimate needs like maybe revenue generation from the store with the overall well-being and the very clearly stated priorities of the community itself.
It's definitely something significant to think about, a real moment for reflection, perhaps, for everyone involved.